We needed to pay 65K down a week, which is crazy. Our CMO was not happy that we invested it. One's already on the way from China, and the other one's close to being finished. I have no clue in 30 days when they land at port what they're going to cost. It has to make money, and we have to be winning with them. He called it the chopping block, where basically every person, every agency, every app, and every partner we cut today, if we don't even know what it does, or if there's for sure not ROI.
All right. Weeks of planning, back and forth with Ben and I. We finally got him on the podcast. I think we're going to call this Quarters and Cents. Welcome to the first episode. Um, Ben, why don't you just kind of start with who are you? What brand do you represent? Like, why are we jamming? Um, give the listeners a little bit of like insight into what you sell, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, my name's Ben Perkins, and I'm a big fan of Alex M's. Uh, and yeah, I started a menswear brand in 2017 called And Collar. The idea was making Under Armour dress shirts. That was the original pitch deck. The concept first came to me when I was in Hong Kong as a 11-year-old. So I've got the 2008 Microsoft Paint logo on my
Oh,
family's
we'll have to
singular
get that up here
desktop
at some point.
computer. The old brand used to be called Wicca Sweat, and started it in 2017 just to get a resume builder on file for interviews. And here I am, stupidly or bravely or luckily, 8 years later, and still selling men's stretchy clothes. So we sell dress shirts, ties, pants, blazers, socks, anything you need to wear as a daily mover or for your big occasions.
Yeah, and Ben and I think we met what was it like 4 or 5 years ago when I was at Loop, and I think like one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast with you and for everyone listening is Ben is one of the most like transparent humans I know. There is no like there's nothing that's a secret or like needs to be held back, and I was inspired by all the LinkedIn posts that you were doing, kind of like going through the health of the business. And I thought like, hey, we should just turn some of this like written content into a jam and just like talk about some of these things and go through them together. So Ben has graciously given us his P&L for Q1. And what we're going to try to do here is like go through on a quarterly basis what's going on, dive deeper into some of those things, and then try to like look forward into the next quarter and make some kind of like bets, guesses on what's going to happen and what's going to be important. So I'm just going to quickly summarize what you sent over, Ben, and then we can kind of like dig into it. All right. So for Q1 year over year, we got net sales plus 29%, gross margin plus 4%, gross profit plus 34%, advertising and marketing at plus 1%, G&A at 12%, interest down 84%, and net income 49%. So when I look at this, Ben, the thing that immediately jumps off the page to me is plus 49 net income on plus 29% net sales. Like that is crazy efficiency. How did that happen in Q1?
Uh, Honestly, and before people think that we're amazing, if I could take this for the rest of the year right now, I would run. So I can contextualize this. Most of this, honestly, was powered by Wholesale. So we're trying to really grow the omni-channel. You know, I guess that's grammatically incorrect. We're trying to be an omni-channel business. Um, and so this was mostly powered by a big box retailer, Men's Warehouse. So whatever, 600 doors, basically placing the largest single PO that we've ever had in our 7 years of business or 8 years of business. And so that really pads the stats, both top and bottom line, where just quickly, so I mean, to help make sense of these numbers, I mean, Wholesale is the most profitable part of our business. I've talked about how, employees have had P&Ls. We also have P&L by business segment. So if you call Shopify D2C, Amazon, Wholesale, and then our sub-brand Flight, basically four businesses in our opinion. Uh, and Wholesale, there's really very little delta between gross profit and net profit or net income, where we're not having returns and exchanges. We're not really spending against it. We reorged our team, and so there's not 10% commission on sales. I mean, my wife wishes that we paid me 10% on these. So honestly, that's where most of that increase on top line and bottom line is being powered by a 30,000 unit regional rollout by Men's Warehouse. So I wish I could say D2C was really strong. It was pretty flat for us. Uh, and so it's not like everything grew proportionally. This was very much powered by a great wholesale PO.
But I think this is an important piece of this though, because if you're a D2C business, like obviously you started D2C and like, hey, we've added these additional units into this. How long has wholesale been a part of the AnCollar strategy? Obviously, like you just said, this was the biggest PO ever, but has wholesale and like selling into retailers been a piece of the strategy for a while?
It was more inbound at first, so we were really hyper regional when we began. Lots of buzz in the Intermountain, Rocky Mountain West in the U.S. And so basically anyone and everyone who had a menswear store came to us. And so it was pretty strong, 1.5 million between kind of the local mom and pop
Yep.
stores or department stores. So we've had that since 2020 when we really ratcheted up the spend. Uh, but outside of that, it's been a very small portion of our business. We always knew we wanted to pursue it, where we're trying to position ourselves as the everyday guy's shirt. And so it makes sense to go where those customers go. And we're almost more utilitarian and function than fashion. So it's, oh, Alex has his buddy's wedding next week. I need to go into a store to pick up a shirt. We thought we could do really well in like a Men's Warehouse where you're almost brand agnostic. You're just trying to get a
Yep.
shirt for your buddy's wedding. And so I think more so over the past 12 months, we're like, hey, this has got to be a bigger percentage of top line uh, with that 50 million in top line goal over the next 3 years. It's like, oh, I think a big portion of that is going to be uh, wholesale. And Men's Warehouse is about as much of a golden goose in terms of big box for dress shirt sales. I think they're the number one retailer in the US for dress shirt sales, or at least that's what their buyer told us. I'm trying to beat us down on price. uh, and so just made a lot of sense to get in there.
And as you look towards that like $50 million goal over the next 3 years, looking at wholesale here, yeah, a little bit of a golden goose here. Is there anything else that you're looking for on the wholesale front? Like, hey, you probably got the biggest door that makes sense for you. Like, where do you go from here? And again, the reason I'm asking this is like, hey, if D2C has been kind of like flat and like most of the growth that we saw in or I'm not going to say growth specifically, but like, hey, the profitability that we were talking about at the top is coming from wholesale. Is it, hey, let's maintain what we have or let's go get more? Like, how do you kind of view that?
Yes. And what I mean
Yes to
by
both.
that, we totally botched last year or 2 years ago, excuse me. It was our first EDI, 10 plus store account, Shields, if you're familiar. Great buying team. I think they've got 37 doors. They're some of the first to bet on direct to consumer brands. So they're the first wholesale account for lots of the great logos that companies you've worked at would pride themselves on. So I think
Hmm.
they were the first wholesaler to carry on, the running shoes, Chubbies, Viore is that's where I first discovered Viore. So really great team, and they rolled us out to 30 doors. We botched every single way that we could. So we use that as a cautionary tale, where this Men's Warehouse PO on 30,000 units was regional. I think it's 11 doors. It's very
Okay.
few doors out of the 500, 600. So the answer to your question, I think one, we want to nail sell through on these 30,000 units. Say, hey, we're going to provide an awesome experience. Admittedly, it's been kind of rocky on both sides. Uh, but saying, hey, let's grow these 11 stores from 30,000 units in a 3 month period to 20,000. And then beyond that, over 18 months, it's like, we would like to be in all 550 doors. And then, I mean, you can do the math and extrapolate. It's like, whoa, then this account becomes several 100,000 units a year. Uh, and so so that's specifically just looking at Men's Warehouse. But beyond that, adding in a lot of regional department stores, getting back into a Shields. I mean, there's still several hundred doors of kind of smaller shops that could probably collectively compete with Men's Warehouse. Uh, and then alternatively, Costco has reached out to us again, just on a regional
Interesting.
basis. And so there are opportunities. We just learning from Shields, the reason I brought them up, we know that we aren't good when we bite off more than we can chew. It's not something that like we adapt really fast and we make everything a great experience. So we're viewing it as we have one shot to nail each account, maybe two. Uh, so let's do it really well. So we're purposely kind of pushing off some opportunities to make sure that we're delivering on the current one in our hands.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And in a previous role, we did a lot of work with consumer packaged goods, and like consumer packaged goods are inherently like very retail oriented. And the doors thing kind of comes up all the time. It's like, oh, can I get into a national chain? Can I get this like distribution across the country? And like feels really good when you get that big PO and it's like, okay, it's out there, but it also has to sell, like it has to sell in
Yeah,
retail. Like
yeah,
the game's not done. Like if they're going to buy from you again, you got to make sure that it's selling through. So I really like that concept of like, hey, we're in 11 here. Let's expand that account. And then like, hey, maybe we add in like another account and kind of like do it relationship management. Like that's really what it comes down to. Cause like what I don't want people to walk away listening to this being like, oh, Ben had like a crazy profitable quarter and it's because he got into wholesale. So like, I'm just going to go knock on every single door and try to sell in. You got to sell through as well.
yeah. And you know, a little bit more color on the Men's Warehouse relationship. Technically, their first POs in 2023, end of 2022, and it was for 5,000 units. And then the relationship just kind of went cold turkey. We gave over the 5,000 units and we didn't do anything to help sell through. They weren't giving us any sell through data, but we weren't pounding on the door for it. And so it just totally just happened. It was I don't know what happened in 2 years. And then they came back to us. And that was a demand we made at first where it's like, hey, we don't want this to be a 1 quarter wonder. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, you know, a one PO wonder. And then 2 years later, or whenever you kind of feel like it, let's do this again. And so very intentional this time, saying, hey, we need buy the 11 stores, sell through on a weekly basis. Uh, we would love to be able to help support sell through by, because to your point, you need to sell to the end consumer, not just to
Yes.
the wholesale partner. It's like, hey, we would love to be able to help affect those sales on the sales floor. So point of sale display, we would love to get the store associates free shirts on us because there's nothing more powerful than Alex is helping a customer and he's wearing an ad call shirt. It's like, hey, the one that I'm wearing actually fits me really well. I think you'd like it. And so trying to be intentional about that. So next week, we'll be visiting all 11 stores and just talking to the people and saying, hey, we're here to support because we win if you win.
Yep.
So anyway, all stuff we have not done in the past. And I think, yeah, trying to learn and get better each PO.
So when we go back to the financials from the top of the episode, like plus 1% on advertising and marketing. I'm assuming like, hey, if we're gonna go this wholesale route, is that going to be increasing? Like, is marketing and advertising costs like going into the wholesale channel? And maybe is the plus 1% just from like the D2C oriented kind of marketing and like, hey, maybe this spins up into something else for the wholesale channel?
Yeah, I mean, we hired a new CMO beginning of February because we've never had a great, you know, I think we've never really owned advertising and marketing. It just happened, and we hand over, plug in the credit cards, like go and do your work, meta algorithm. Uh, we can spend a lot on some high production ads and just hope you throw it out there and pray that it sticks on the wall. So trying to be intentional for the first time. And so I guess April 10th, he's been here for 65 days. Uh, did a lot of testing for the first time and saying, hey, if we do tests of completely reducing or stopping meta spend for a week, what's impact on sales? And he's created his own little daily profit tracker. And I don't say that in a
Love that.
belittling way if he's listening. But it, it's very manual, and you could find some of the stuff in like a North Beam or Triple Whale as well. But he likes to just own it, and I think there's power and to him his learning curve by him plugging in manually the data. But yeah, I mean, we found correlation when we dropped ad spend by 30%. Top line pretty much dropped by 30% too.
Okay.
And a number of days. I mean, it was perfectly directly correlated. Uh, and so testing, just a lot of testing is going on, but diving in. Yeah, here now I'm just getting all jargony. Sorry. Answering, I think the question I heard you say, we never in our split P&Ls, we never gave credit to sales and marketing helping power wholesale. So I
Okay.
think that's actually an inherent flaw with our siloed P&Ls, where there's also correlation. We know this with inbound wholesale requests with an increase in ad spend. Because like, hey, you know who's getting served by Meta and YouTube ads about dress shirts? Dress shirt buyers.
Buyers.
Uh, yeah, yeah. And it's like, so that for sure impacts it. And now we're finally understanding that. Uh, is one thing I think you had said. And that's just the initial selling to the wholesaler. And then I think it helps power a little bit sales on the sales floor too. Where it's like, oh, I've heard of this brand. I don't know much about them. I think it was the one where the guy threw coffee on himself. Like, oh, I might as well. Or you're not particularly passionate about a dress shirt. So if there's any recognition,
Yep.
you go there. But then the last thing I'll say, actual say ad spend is a little bit down. Uh, Content creation is up in a big way. So in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on the editing, we're launching a quarter million ad spot again. I think that's before ad spend. Our CMO was not happy that we invested in it before he came. He's like, I could make 10 videos. But with Raindrop, which you probably know those folks, the ones behind Dr. Squatch and Native. Uh, so we're going to do a fun campaign there, but invested heavily up front on content creation. So that one we got to that one better work, or else we just flushed a quarter million down the drain.
Hey, we might be seeing it on the next episode when we come back
Yeah.
next quarter
Oh, I'll let
to
you
talk
know.
about this.
Yeah, I told our CMO, I said, hey, you have to at least give this the old college try. Like we have to spend, I mean, the break even on a $250,000 ad spot pre-spend. It's like, oh, let's call gross profit 57% or gross margin 57%. You got to spend almost $750,000 after ad spend, or you have to make about three quarters. You have to
Yep.
make 750 grand to break even on that. So you got to spend however many dollars to get there. So fingers crossed.
And so you said like, hey, with CMO in, we started to do some kind of testing. Hey, spend drops 30%. Hey, top line drops 30%. But hey, we only have plus 1% on like the advertising and marketing here. So like, do you feel like you kind of hit a sweet spot in like what you want to spend here? Like, are we testing going the other way? Like, hey, 30% isn't going to get 30% on our top line. So like, hey, we may have found like the equilibrium here.
Yeah, so he did that as well, and I should have called that out. This is why you're better than me. Yeah, so yeah, in the exact same type of tests, uh, increase in spend. What's the related increase in revenue? And yeah, where we're at right now is pretty close to break even, and so we've got to find ways to improve efficiency. Because I mean, ideally, that that line item next quarter is up 50%, and the quarter after up 300%. Like, I mean, that's the one I want to be up an infinite amount. Uh, but when cash constraints are a real thing and you need to make money to spend money, it's the other way where you need to spend money to make money. It's like, oh, we
Yep.
need to make money to spend money. Um, so yeah, that one I would like to see really increase. Where last year and the years before, it was cool to see, hey, we still increased top line a little while decreasing advertising spent by 25%. It's like, oh, that's awesome. And that helps the bottom line. But at the end of the day, our new customer cohorts were shrinking. It's like, oh, I think we're on a death cycle to stay at 10 million forever or start to go down if we don't increase that. So it's like, it's kind of cool that, net sales are up 29%. A&M is only up 1%. But I mean, there's a lot more nuance to it than that.
Yep. 1000%. And like, hey, that $50 million goal, yes, obviously, like we want to see top line increasing and like, hey, can I actually get more out of advertising and marketing? And you talked about efficiency there for a second. And I think like there might be some historical context for listeners around like 2024 and like where we're at now, because I know from talking like their efficiency was kind of like the name of the game in 2024. So like maybe do you want to just give the listeners kind of like a quick, hey, we slowed down. Why did we slow down? Was it efficiency? Was it profitability? Like why not continue kind of like the growth path?
Yeah, I mean, long story short, bloat and a banking crisis for us personally, uh, where we just spent too much on agencies, spent too much on people, spent too much on tech, and then our bank called us on it, and we had too much debt outstanding, and so we had no choice but to reduce that debt. And the way you do that is by making money, and we knew that we could almost shut sales off completely and we have good enough 90-day LTV, 360-day and beyond LTV lifts from existing customers. We're like, oh, we know we can weather the storm and still increase a little bit. So that's where, yeah, where we're at, where we got forced into it. And I think it was a actually healthy exercise. And now for the first time in years, it's like, oh, we're kind of back to ground zero. Let's build the right way again.
And maybe to elaborate on that a bit, I'm sure like as people are looking at this P&L that we have up on the screen, like the minus 84% in interest, I'm assuming we can tie that to the story that you just told.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, merchant cash advances where you borrow against future revenues. So Shopify Capital, Wayflyer, there's a lot out there. We had all of them. Uh, then we were with a group called Ampla. And anyway, so yeah, when you're borrowing against future revenues with no guarantees, it's like awesome unless you're growing pretty fast
Ah,
or they call your
yep.
debt immediately because it becomes expensive where you pay off the debt in a daily remittance as a percentage of sales. So it's like, oh, if I'm growing 100%, I'll pay off a $250,000 loan in 3 months at technically a fixed payback rate where you on the 250, it's like, oh, you've got to pay your total payback is 300, let's call it. But if you pay that back in 4 months, that 50% becomes a lot more expensive.
You said like, hey, we're growing fast, so we have to pay it, and our debt got called. What about like the second part there? What happened? Like why did it get called?
Yeah, so Ampla, who is lending to a lot of great logos and great D2C brands, many of whom anyone who is listening to this knows. So Cuts was the biggest logo on their site. Awesome brand. There are a few others too. They got a little bit too exposed, and the New York Times did a long article. It's the only time I've been in the New York Times.
Hey,
And they flew out a photographer, and I was smiling. I was like, "This is cool," to our office. And so I'm smiling, and they said, "Actually, isn't this kind of a bad story? Like you should frown." And so it's a picture of me like frowning. I think it was on the cover of the business page. I always wanted it to be a good thing, but they told this sad tale of like an orphan who had no money. Uh, and anyway, so Ampla just got a little bit too exposed. They're back. their backers, Goldman, I think it was Chase, JPM, they got a little spooked, probably for rightful reasons. And so they called their debt. And so then they just passed it along uh, to merchants. And so they said, hey, I think at the time it was 1.7 million that we had on our line of credit with Ampla, down from the 3 million it was the year before, which is just crazy and stupid of us. Uh, yeah, it was 1.5, 1.7 million at the time. I said, hey, you got to pay this back like yesterday. And so we said, okay, we need 30 days. Like, give us some time. We were scrambling and ended up needing to go with Wayflyer again. We kind of went back to the well. They saved us. So I'm going to give them credit and props.
Credit.
But I mean, it's expensive and we had to pay down that line, because they refinanced. We needed to pay 65K down a week, which is crazy. It's like you got to be making money to pay down 65K a week, or else you got to borrow from someone else. No one was going to lend to us at that point. What is it? The rob Peter to pay Paul. It's like no
Yeah.
one's gonna. Yeah, so no one was going to do that. So we had to cash flow, and that's where kind of like a drill sergeant. We're like, okay, we got to make money on this. On this.
It's really interesting though, because I mean, why do some of these, like, interest rates were cheap. Like, it was basically free money even what, like 5 years ago? Like, it
Oh
was
yeah.
really cheap to borrow money. And I think like that's kind of one of the purposes of this show is like operational excellence, profitability, efficiency. So like, hey, you kind of got forced into this, but like anyone kind of playing the game now, like debt isn't free or close to free. Interest rates are higher. So like I think people are playing the same game. Unfortunately, like you had your debt called and you had to like really like get forced into this. But I'm guessing there's a lot of like crazy learnings here that by being in that situation kind of like accelerated the learning. And I think like a lot of D2C brands that might be younger and are like going through this right now, like that debt and like even venture capital, like some of these things aren't really there. Like you got to finance your own growth now. So like any kind of like war stories or like tactics that came about during that time that you think are like universally applicable, like brands could be focused on that.
I mean, everything you said is true. I mean, I learned more in a 4 month period than probably I've ever learned in my life because, I mean, it actually was survival for the first time. Uh, yeah, I mean, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you didn't even need to try and you could get tons of money, whether it was
Yep.
through disaster, government disaster loans, uh, or anyone was financing, yeah, crazy rates. So, well, one, I would say don't take on too much debt, but I think that's harder to do now than it was 3 or 4 years ago. If you're someone new, like I think there are appropriate and healthy guardrails now
Yes.
that weren't in place. So honestly, I think it's like hard to do as poorly as we did uh, in that perspective. So that's one comment. Two, if you're forced into being profitable, I think there are savvy enough commercial banks now where before the old adage we always heard, and it felt true, was, oh, you don't get, you know, real banks don't give you money until you don't need it anymore. There's probably an element of that that's true. But I think, again, in this almost converging landscape now where you don't have 0%, you know, interest rates with no
Yep.
guarantees that you could pull down tomorrow. It's like, oh, I think there's savvy enough bankers where if you're making money, they'll go after you. And so I've talked about KeyBank. They came and saved the day, and they're the main reason for that reduction in interest. Where there's SBA, so Small Business Administration, more flexible for smaller companies with a little bit more risk that they can finance you through those type of deals. Or if you're big enough, you can graduate from the SBA. So I would say start those conversations sooner. Uh, and then again, they have things inherently built in as guardrails to not let you just go nuts like we did, where you have to send over quarterly reports. You have to have a certain level of profitability to qualify in the first place. Uh, so I don't think that's a good answer to what you said. I think it's almost impossible to take as much debt and have as much leverage as we did. Yeah.
And when you're in that's like so obviously like when that debt's getting called and like you need to or you're saying like $65,000 a week, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so like when you're trying to free up cash like that, is there anything obviously like you did it out of necessity, but is there anything that you were doing to free that cash up that has now become kind of like a principle moving forward? Like, hey, it came about from kind of like quote wartime, but is now kind of like something we do, like anything like operationally, like you talked about like the agency and people component of this, like you ended up like cutting in a bunch of places. Like, was
Yeah.
any of it like I'm actually never going back to that? Like it actually taught us to not need it.
Yeah. This is where, and I need to get him on one of these. Maybe he can join us. Mark Brown, who came from a banking world, and he's the one who transformed and saved our business during this crazy time. Uh, he, uh, he taught me that everything needs to have ROI. It sounds like crass and mercenary, and it's like, oh, we're in it for people. We're in it for people. And I personally love relationships as much as anyone, but he taught me that it's irresponsible to pay others money if there isn't ROI, thus robbing you from paying your employees money. Uh, that was a really circuitous way of saying, hey, just analyze everything you're paying for, whether it's a Shopify app, whether it's an agency. And it's like, hey, if we're paying this agency 25 grand a month, which is a lot to buy our ads, again, doing the break even. It's like, okay, how much do we need to be spending at what level of blended ROAS? Again, not dialing in on the efficiency bit. It's like, oh, if Alex is our head of wholesale sales, how many new sales does he have to be closing a week to justify paying him? Because if he's not pulling his weight, then we're robbing our head of CX who's doing a killer job.
Yep.
Uh, we're robbing her of a job if we go out of business. And so uh, that's me trying to spin it off as compassionate, but the real thing is, talk about quarters and cents. I think it's a very apt name. It's like everything has to make quarters and cents. Probably spelled the way that you've got this spelled.
In both ways.
No, yeah, in both ways, where it has to make money and we have to be winning with them. So that it was a binary. He called it the chopping block, where basically every person, every agency, every app, uh, and every partner, so like 3PL too, is this thing chopping block? Like we cut today, if we don't even know what it does, or if there's for sure not ROI, do we chop it today? Middle was let's decide, and you set a KPI or a measure of success to say, okay, this should be on the chopping block, or this goes home safe. And then
Yep.
putting everything into three buckets with a way to define it as being successful rather than cool.
I think this is really tactical. Tech, people, anything. Like it has to make dollars and cents. Again,
Yeah.
in like both terms. How do you, for someone listening, like chopping block, evaluate, or safe? Like, what is there? You're talking about ROI, return on investment. Is there like a multiplier that you're looking at to be like, yep, that is for sure safe. That falls in the let's evaluate. And like chopping block, I'm assuming is like, there is no ROI here. Just like toss it.
Yeah. No ROI, it's gone. It's not even close. If there, and the ROI, and this is where Mark again opened my eyes, where it's like, oh, it has to be ROI on a gross profit basis. It's like, oh,
Yes.
top line looks really sexy, but oh, forget that it costs 43% to actually deliver that product to
Yep.
Samantha in Florida, to actually make the good, ship the good, factor in returns and exchanges. Like, don't hide any of that stuff below, because those are very much vanity metrics where we make fun of some like publicly traded companies who are awesome, by the way. It's like Figs, and where cost of delivery seems like it should be above when you're analyzing ROI,
Yep.
where on their S ones, and make sense. Look, I'd trade my business for a $500 million business tomorrow. So this isn't me like digging on them, but I think they can get away with that like financial creativity where a small business cannot. It's like,
Yep.
okay, factor in every single thing. So let's call our gross margin 57%. I mean, it climbed a couple points, but let's call it 57%, factoring every single thing in. Payment processing, because Shopify takes whatever that percentage is, 2.25 on a Shopify Plus plan. You got to pay your 3PL. I mean, yeah, you got to pay 20% to the actual cost of goods to the factory. You got to import it. That cost is changing every day for us. I don't know what
We're coming back to that one.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so baking it all in, so let's call it 57%. It's like, okay, and I'm going to use $100. It's like that thing's got to, uh, I'll leave a absolute dollar amount. Anyway, there's got to be ROI on the 57%. If it's close and there isn't any way to kind of unlock it, then get rid of it. Uh, So I don't know if there's like a firm, oh, there's got to be 3x on gross margin to stay or not go. But I think you have a good enough take.
Yeah.
You as a business operator that you'll know.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing there is like, hey, look at the bottom line, not the top line when evaluating ROI
Yeah,
on these
yeah,
things. Like especially when it comes to again, like I feel like advertising is probably like the biggest culprit of this is like looking at top line on the advertising front instead of like, hey, after we're all in on this, cool, I actually lost money
yeah, 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 yeah.
on this top line.
We've been guilty of that.
Um, okay, I think we hit on a lot of the things from like this quarter's P&L that I wanted to hit on. Let's kind of like try to look into the future a bit. So as we're recording this, Q1 is wrapped. We're a few days into Q2. What's on your mind going into Q2?
I know tariffs are on everyone's minds right now. Uh, Thankfully, we're fairly insulated. So 70% of revenue goods come from Ethiopia, which is at a trade, the US has a trade surplus with Ethiopia. It was the minimum impact level on those reciprocal tariffs that were announced. And I don't know if those are staying or not going. I won't pretend to be an
Well,
expert.
we got 90 days.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah. So
who knows?
I don't know. Yeah. 30% of goods are in China, which sucks. And so we're shifting as much as we can as fast to Ethiopia or Cambodia or Indonesia as we can. Uh, but we've got two containers that are basically, well, one's already on the way from China and the other one's close to being finished. And those are spring summer patterns. Uh, they're sitting right by me over here. Some nice ones. Uh, but those are from China. And it's like, I have no clue in 30 days when they land at port what they're going to cost. So the big thing on our mind, and I'm not just saying this because this is where you work, is price testing. Um, and again, marketing will always still be on our mind. We've got to make that range rep video work. We're going to still push, and we're actually seeing tariffs as an opportunity to push where others might pull. One, because of we're a little bit naive, and two, we're out of Ethiopia. And so it gives us a little bit more breathing room than some competitors who have like a super majority made out of China. Uh, and so we've already got a roadmap of tests. Going to work with you, on this podcast. I think in real time with viewers or listeners on things we could pull. But the first one is 70% of revenue comes from our range shirt. So what I'm wearing, the white shirt, it's our bread and butter. And so we just launched, or I set up the test today with IntelliGems to test $48, which it's currently at, $49.50, $49.99, and then a $55 price point, all split, at 25%, each one of those test groups, uh, just to see what price inelasticity or elasticity looks like for customers. And then beyond that, shipping threshold, free shipping threshold, and then tie pricing. Ties aren't crazy, but they're the best upsell item on planet Earth, where it costs us $3 to make, land it. It's super light to ship, so no real incremental cost on shipping. It's a one SKU, a single SKU thing without size. So using after sell at checkout, at cart, at checkout, post checkout. It's like, hey, buy this tie for $12 or $18. Uh, going to be testing that as our next product for price testing. Cause like, hey, times 30, 40,000 units a year, which isn't a very big percentage of revenue, but it's a lot of units. It's like, oh, if you go from our current $18 price point to 19.99 and 25, and then you do the counterintuitive intelligence way at 15, it's like, hey, maybe that profit per item or profit per visitor, whatever the North Star is, it's like maybe that skyrockets. So we've got a roadmap to, increase prices one way or another.
Yep.
Uh, yeah,
So with what you're talking about there, okay, price testing, free shipping thresholds, the ties is really interesting. When Ben was talking about like the counterintuitive, like drop the price, I think like the craziest thing about prices is just like the asymmetric nature of changes. Like, hey, if I increase my price is 10%, how come AOV only went up 6%? Well, hey, there's substitutes. Hey, I dropped my price by 10%. Hey, why is my profitability going through the roof? Oh, like crazy conversion gains. Like, hey, I dropped price by 5%, but I got a 15% conversion bump. Like, you just don't really know. And what I love what you're doing with the let's test four prices and build out a bit of an elasticity curve, especially on a top seller. You're going to get a ton of data in there to try to figure out some of this. And when we're talking about like, hey, it's not about top line, it's about bottom line. Let's look at what the profitability is going to be like at all these different price points. And like, hey, let's figure out the margins on some of these, like $3 for the tie, and then retailing it at 18 is pretty damn good. And
yeah,
if we can get like, again, if you can get another dollar out of that without taking any sort of conversion hit, like you're kind of finding quote free money here if it's not resulting in any kind of like conversion hit. And with the gift with purchase or like, hey, kind of like upsell, probably not going to have like a ton of price elasticity there. Like if it goes to $20 versus 18, I mean, we're going to test to find out.
yeah.
But like in theory, hey, just like adding that on at the end, especially if you put it to like a threat, like a shipping threshold or something, I think you can get people adding that in without really thinking about it.
That's the thought where, our suit jacket, our pants, they both in terms of share of revenue, I mean, totally dwarf the ties. But to your point, it's like almost a thoughtless add-on that I think our post purchase upsell, there's an 11% take rate on ties right now. So yeah, it's a pretty good percentage. And again, I told you the margins on it. So it's uh and so again, you times it by 40,000 units. Let's say the winner isn't 25, it's not 15, it's 19.99. Again, we'll talk about it next quarter or the quarter after when we do it. It's like, oh, of all the items that seem like they could have an impact after our hero product, the ties, let's call it 50,000 units in sales times $1.99. So, whoa, that found someone's salary.
Yep.
Uh, and so that's something I'm glad people are talking about more in ecom. Uh, is like tactical ways to make money
Yes.
rather than cool ways to spend money. Uh, and I mean, you said that hopefully the purpose of this is to talk more about the first rather than the second, where there's so many podcasts like, oh, come out with these 18 landing pages, these types of landing pages with this type of copy. Where I think there's enough out there, and I'm not as smart as some of the people whose stuff like I subscribe to. Uh, but I think the things that are neglected are the ones that honestly are probably the quickest levers to pull. It's like, so that's what I'm hoping, with you're keeping me accountable every quarter to not just post the wins, but also the losses. And then we're excited about Intelligems, where same with checkout. There's a lot of stuff that people just, and so while Brian, our CMO, is hopefully going out making new content, getting content from new people's eyeballs and making sure that they work. It's like, oh, this is the way we can dial in, operational efficiency in a very replicable way. So that's the hope.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, like people conflate advertising and marketing as the same thing. They're not. Like there's the multiple P's of marketing, and like promotion is just
Uh-huh.
one of them. Like price is another. Place, like in ecom, you're talking about like different channels, wholesale, Amazon. Like I would consider that like the place component of a D2C business. And it's not about selling more, it's about selling more profitably. Like I don't want to just move
Yeah.
units. I want to move them as efficiently and as profitably as I can. And hey, if people listening to this podcast with us, we can focus on like the operational excellence rather than just the advertising excellence. I like what you said. Maybe I like what you said better with like, let's teach people how to make money rather than spend money.
Yeah.
So we'll keep it focused on that. But Ben, from what you were saying there, maybe when we come back next quarter, focused on kind of like these tactical upsells, free shipping thresholds, and price. In terms of the P&L, I think like what we're gonna hope to see is like that +4 that we have on gross margin, see that improve, and then. I mean, like the advertising and marketing at the +1, like we're probably, like you said, we're going to find ways. You got a big investment coming up. We're going to try to find ways to increase that without seeing like, again, you were super efficient this quarter. So like maybe that efficiency goes down a bit. We're
Mhm.
overall better off, more dollars made and more profitable. So we'll come back and circle back on like the gross margin, net income, and advertising and marketing. I think will be the three things that if we execute on what you were talking about, we should be coming back to see those improve. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We're going to come back in a quarter and take a look at that, both the wins and the losses.
The last thing that I should add, and let's do this for the future ones, people can follow along, is that new customer cohort growth.
Mm.
Because I think that's probably, I mean, not in the P&L, but tells a big story. I don't know if there's a better forecasting tool than that as a line item. So maybe I'll include that next time. And because it's like, oh, if advertising and marketing stays flat, but new customer growth is up 50%, then like that's a story. So I think
Yep.
I'll include uh, I'll include that because I think that's an important part of this journey where pairing that with, if we're calling it our intelligence North Star, the profit per customer or profit per visitor. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'll include those two, and that hopefully tells the tale along with the rest of these items.
Yeah, that's a really good profit per visit and new customer cohort. On the new customer cohort, like anecdotally, where do you think that was at for the quarter?
Uh, Honest answer. Actually, you know what? If you give me less than 30 seconds, I can
We will
find
give you
this
the
out.
30 seconds.
Okay.
We're doing it live.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just going on my Shopify dashboard, which I mean, we pay for Northbeam too, but I think Shopify tells a great story. Okay. New customers year on year through the year was down 15%. This is not through the quarter. This is through April 10th, so a few extra days. So
Cool.
down 15% year on year.
And yeah, I think like again, if we come back to what we were saying, like let's make more, like let's sell more and do it profitably. Hey, we also want to grow. Like one thing I don't want people to walk away from this is like, hey, top line isn't important. Like you do need to be growing the business, and like we're gonna find a way to do it efficiently. And I think that new customer cohort, again, that will be like good ad for the advertising and marketing line item that we're looking at is like, are we actually getting new
Yeah.
customers? Are we doing so efficiently? So when we come back, we'll get those two on there. All right, Ben, we'll come back and do this in a quarter and see how it went, see how well we predicted what was going to happen happens, and see what kind of craziness ensues.
Okay. Fingers crossed. Appreciate it, Alex.